Well, it's the time-honored tradition here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team wins, your team's in the playoffs. There's a crossover show with the team you cover versus, obviously, the team the other hosts are covering. And in this case, it's a Locked On Warriors, Locked On Lakers crossover. So this also doubles down as a preview for the series. Enjoy. And Kylen joined me as well, which is an extra bonus. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to a special crossover second round of the playoffs edition of Locked On Lakers and Locked On Warriors. Brian Kamenetzky, Andy Kamenetzky, Cyrus Saatsaz, and Kylen Mills. The Lakers completely remade themselves at the trade deadline, and the Warriors kind of have turned into the Warriors again. It certainly seems. And so this is... I think the playoff series that most basketball fans were hoping to see. It is the Lakers versus the Warriors tonight in San Francisco, game one at the Chase Center. I don't know about you guys. I am incredibly psyched just as a basketball fan, let alone a podcast host, for this one.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. I mean, it doesn't get any better than the Northern versus Southern California rivalries. I mean, the fans here were getting really heated about this Kings series, and there's no history of the Warriors and Kings. Now you've got Lakers, Golden State Warriors, and obviously LeBron versus Steph is the thing everyone's going to be talking about. Two of the greatest to play the game, and it doesn't get much better than that.
You just mentioned that that series that just concluded, Kings Warriors, without the history that I guess would, if nothing else, accompany LeBron v Steph. For Cyrus, then Kylen, how do you guys feel about the state of the Warriors right now? And I ask that just because there had been this conventional wisdom that everybody should be jockeying to get the Kings. They would be the easiest out of all these teams in the Western Conference. And this series went 7. Took the Warriors 2 opportunities to close out. One of them was a lost opportunity at home. So the dust is settled. They're in the second round. But how do you feel about them right now?
I mean, my takeaway was that the Kings were a lot better than I anticipated. They're a damn good team. There is a reason why they're the 3 seed. I know Kylen has emphasized that as well. They're a really good team. De'Aaron Fox is absolutely the real deal. So I know the Warriors were able to neutralize Sabonis a little bit, but the Kings have players, man. That's what I took away from that. And on one hand, I'm incredibly stoked that the Warriors won. We were reminded yet again of Stephen Curry's greatness. But on the other hand, that series going 7 games, you're right. I guess we're going to find out just how good the Kings were and where the Warriors are. If you're asking me where the Warriors are right now, which I know is what you are, I'd love to hear Kylen's response to this because I really don't know. I don't know. I feel confident that with this series, but if you're asking me, like, am I as confident as I was a year ago? No. And will this team win a world championship? I have no idea. So that's where I am, Kylen. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we saw in the series against the Kings was a little bit of what we saw from the Warriors all season, which is some inconsistencies. I thought we saw inconsistencies, not necessarily in basketball tactics, but in just the intensity, the hustle, the mental focus of this group. I thought that towards the end of the series, game 6 in particular, some of the Warriors looked tired. So going into this Lakers series, that's one of the biggest questions for me, is not a lot of rest for the Warriors to turn around and get going on Tuesday. And I think that Steph sustained a huge workload. He's another year older than he was last year. I don't think the Warriors have quite the same depth as they did last season, particularly in size in their second unit. And I just think a lot is being asked of Steph Curry and this core that is now another another year older and, has another year of wear and tear under their belt. So I thought game 6, to me, it did look like there were some tired legs. I thought the Warriors were a bit inconsistent throughout the series. They end up being able to pull it out thanks to a spectacular performance from Steph Curry. But can they consistently put together 4 good performances against the Lakers, now having to turn around very quickly and come back out in game 1? And we know the Warriors have struggled on the road, so they have to win these home games at Chase Center. So they're going to have to come out and bring some energy. I just don't know where it's going to come from at this point. I honestly do think that the Warriors looked a little bit tired in game 6.
It's like a series full of like old people. Like when it's like this is that's what's going on here. I just the game 1 thing I think is critical for the Lakers. A lot of times in these series, you look at the second game or whatever it might be, the Lakers are not going to be any more rested than they are in game 1. It only goes downhill from there. So yeah, we got a few more questions for you guys, and then we'll turn around and let you guys pepper us with some stuff in the next segment. But I think like one of the things that I think is, like I mentioned, the Lakers pre-trade deadline, almost nothing about this team matters. None of the numbers matter, none of the results matter, none of the game matters. What is there a place like that with the Warriors where whether it's games without X, Y, and Z, or like the time that Wiggins missed, or when Steph was hurt, it was like, which parts of the Warriors should Lakers fans be paying attention to when they try to figure out who exactly it is that they're playing? Because the Warriors haven't been that dominant group that they've been in their previous title runs.
I mean, this season just altogether has been kind of an anomaly for the Warriors because of how inconsistent they were. There were flashes of brilliance. There were flashes of just horrific basketball that were played that were super uncharacteristic of this core. And I think that's something we've all been trying to figure out all season. Fans, media members, is who is this Warriors team? I think the one thing that you just have to look at is that the Warriors are always going to be contenders when they have Steph Curry on this roster. He, on any given night, can go out and put together a spectacular performance, a 50-point performance like we saw in game 7 against an extremely talented Sacramento Kings team. So to me, that's the reason why you have to always keep them in the conversation. Draymond Green is an incredible competitor. He's a champion. Klay Thompson, rough game 6 and 7, but on any given night, he can come out and catch fire from beyond the arc. So to me, it's just, these stars on this Warriors teams have been here before. They know how to show up in these situations. So you mentioned, the Warriors, a lot of people bring up, the regular season is the preseason for the Warriors. They make those kind of analogies. I mean, for a lot of fans and media members, this regular season in particular was frustrating because of all of the inconsistencies and struggles. But when it comes time to step up, any of these Warriors champions can and will deliver. So I think for me, that's the thing, is that as long as Steph Curry's on this roster, in addition to some of the other core members, you can't count them out.
Yeah, and just to add to that, this is probably the best version of the Warriors all year.
Right now, for sure.
Yeah, right now, the entire season, Steph's been hurt. Wiggins missed almost the whole year.
Damn
I mean, so I know.
I'm
I'm sorry to break
really
that
hoping for something worse. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Payton II, right? I mean, this is the best version we're seeing of him. And you look at the 4 matchups these two teams played against each other. I keep telling people you can't look at that. That is an utterly worthless stat. I know your team won the series 3-1, but I think Steph missed 2 of those games. Wiggins, I think, missed 2 or 3 of those games. Your team in that first game that you lost was night and day different than what it is
plus
now.
Two, LeBron and D'Angelo Russell missed games even when the Lakers won. So
yeah,
on one hand, you could look at that and say, all right, the shorthanded Lakers can beat, if nothing else, a shorthanded version of the Warriors, or even at times going up against the Warriors who had more of their players. But in trying to figure out what it all means for a series, because, a series is its own animal in and of itself, and it evolves in ways that individual games don't. I honestly have no idea what to make of these matchups, which would have been the same way, by the way, if the Lakers ended up playing the Kings, because all 4 games that the Lakers played against the Kings this year were all before the deadline.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting blank slate, I think, for both of these teams in either direction.
And the Russell thing, just as an example, is fascinating because he as we all saw in game 6 over the weekend, can be a big catalyst for the Lakers offensively in particular. But I know that the Warriors are sitting there on the whiteboard figuring out how are we going to attack D'Angelo Russell and make him play defense. And so sometimes the absence of a player, even if it's a good player, changes the dynamic so much. The Lakers have defended really well, and they've defended really well with D'Lo on the floor, but they are going to go hunting for Russell in this series. I think there's no question. So all these little matchups, play a role.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the Kings used De'Aaron Fox because De'Aaron Fox was in a similar position. I know he's much better than D'Angelo, but the Kings tackled with the issue of who are we going to have Fox defend, right? Because he's not the greatest defender. I think he's better than D'Angelo, but they ultimately put him on Wiggins for a lot of these games. And in Game 7, that was huge. Wiggins attacked him and completely wore him down and took advantage of that matchup. That was a cog there in Game 7 that was overlooked because of how dominant Steph was and Looney's 21 rebounds. But the Wiggins factor in this is going to be big because ultimately I've noticed a lot of teams decide they want to hide their players on Wiggins defensively. I don't understand that. Maybe it's because Draymond and Looney are just so big you can't put a point guard on them. But Wiggins will punish you. He now has a post game. He showed that in the Kings series, and I'm curious to see what the Lakers do in this series.
Yeah, so are we.
Can I ask you guys one more, and then we'll break, and you guys can throw some stuff at us. The coaching aspect of this is fascinating to me, and Lakers fans have been spending a lot of time, a little angsty about Darvin Ham, but they've also spent most of the season under 500, and he's a brand new coach, and all these other things. And one of the things I like to say is there's one fan base in the entire NBA who thinks their coach is good, and that's Miami. Everyone else thinks their coach is awful in some way, and that includes Warriors fans, like online Warriors fans, at least, and Cyrus and his Twitter feed are constantly
this year for the first time
crushing Steve Kerr. So, what's going on there? How much confidence do Warriors fans have right now in Steve Kerr to be the better coach in a series like this?
Go ahead,
Kylen. Cyrus, no, you have strong thoughts about this. You got to lead this one off, unless you want me to give my thoughts briefly. But I think you need to.
I find
Cyrus is more passionate. Cyrus, Cyrus has been pretty open about his criticism of Steve Kerr.
I mean, so a year. This is the first time I've ever been critical, and it was largely because I think all I'm doing is just highlighting a bigger issue, which is a difference in vision between what the front office and Bob Myers envisioned this team doing, which was playing their young players, developing them, getting them ready for the postseason. And then there was Kerr's vision, which is that he doesn't trust these young players for the most part, and unless it's in select spots. Sorry about the dog.
Doesn't like Kerr either.
He doesn't like. Well, he's just annoyed. I love Kerr personally. I love him. I've never once called for his head, but this year, a case in point, he gave so many minutes to these two-way players, and I became synonymous with criticizing those two. But where are they now? I mean, that was clearly a move that was not very smart. I don't know how you could say that was astute. Yes, Mr. President. Yeah, you're correct. Absolutely. That's what I was doing all year. And case in point, we don't see Anthony Lamb, the one guy who got promoted at all. The Ty Jerome thing, I don't understand what the point of that ever was, since it resulted in a 44-38 record, 11-30 on the road. So I think that there's a fundamental difference that I agreed with Bob Myers. I saw the vision that he made, and I totally agreed with it. And Steve Kerr just went his way. And, I don't know if I explained that clearly enough. Kylen, did I? And what are your thoughts, obviously, please?
Yeah, you did. And to some degree, I've agreed with you throughout the season. I mean, part of the challenge is that Steve Kerr has had the onus on him to try to pursue a championship while also developing young players. And it's been the storyline all season for the Warriors. Can they be competitive while trying to carry out this 2-timeline vision that Bob Myers had? And that's where some people maybe see or read between the lines. There could be some friction between Bob Myers and Steve Kerr, because Steve Kerr did not play a lot of his young players as much as a lot of fans would have liked, and as much as a lot of people envisioned. Jonathan Kuminga ended up working his way into the rotation, but he's now out of the rotation, at least in that first round postseason series. He was out of the rotation early this season. Moses Moody got DMP'd a lot down the stretch of the season. And a lot of people questioned, in addition to wanting to see more Patrick Baldwin Jr., I know that's a rookie that at you like, Cyrus. But in general, a lot of people questioned, how is this going to work? So in Steve Kerr's defense, I will say, like, I've asked Cyrus this before, and maybe you guys have some thoughts on this, but when have you seen a team win a championship with so many young players? And at one point in the season, I actually put it down on paper in terms of how many players the Warriors have that are 22 and under. And it is ridiculous. And you look at other teams across the league, and I compared it to, those teams that you expect to be contenders this season, like the Celtics and like the Bucks or like the Nuggets, although the Bucks, it is what it is. But, during the regular season, the teams that were competing well, the Warriors have way more young players. And, how do you balance that with, these veterans who are about to age out and, are in the twilight of their career, but then these young players who need development, they need time. The Warriors weren't winning early on in the season, which I think created some of that struggle because Steve Kerr feels like he's got to play the players that are going to help him win now. They didn't come out like they did last season at, 20 and whatever, that they came out and were 500. But also these young players need to work through some of these mistakes, and they need a little bit longer leash to try to figure it out. So I think it's an interesting dynamic. And I don't know that I remember, at least in recent NBA history, any championship team with so many young players who are expected to play key roles.
It certainly wasn't the Lakers in the bubble. All right, so we had a bunch of questions for you guys. You guys have some for us, and so we'll look at the Lakers end of things next.
Well, if you're a regular viewer of Locked On Warriors, you've heard my spiel before when it comes to PrizePicks. But if you're new and you're unfamiliar with PrizePicks, I've got some fun lined up for you. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy and especially made fun. The entire premise is betting the over-unders on individuals and their accomplishments. Is Stephen Curry going to score over or under 29.5 points? Is LeBron James going to grab over or under 8 rebounds? That's the entire premise. You pick a minimum of 2, a maximum of 6, and hopefully you win up to 25 times your entry, which is a possibility. It's super fun and it's super easy. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, they give you $100. And if you don't have 100, you only got 50, 25, whatever it is, they will match it. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
You are Locked On.
All right. Put us under the microscope. What do you got? Because little plucky underdog Lakers, mom and pop shop up against the tech corporate titans up north with your giant payrolls and whatever. We're just little engines that could down here, but we'll see if we can answer your questions.
Oh my God. That is propaganda. I would just like to say that is some hardcore propaganda.
We support small businesses. That's all we are.
The number 2 market in the country is crying tears of sympathy. Kylen, go ahead. I honestly have nothing right now. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, my question for you guys is just, going into this Kings series, specifically looking at the matchup inside, a lot of people underestimated Kevon Looney and his ability to neutralize Domantas Sabonis. So immediately the questions that I start seeing are, well, can Kevon Looney now compete with an AD? How healthy is AD? Where do you guys see that matchup going? And what do you think are going to be the keys specifically between those two players?
I mean, I think it's a huge matchup, and I think it's one that a lot of casuals may not be thinking is so crucial just because Kevon Looney's had a terrific season, and I think he is, among the better role players in the league in terms of just this is your role, excel at it, and he's broadened his skills. He's become a better passer, but he ain't Anthony Davis, in terms of just overall skill, the ability to put a team on his back. That's not him. But there are a few things Looney does that really important, namely that work on the offensive glass. You don't want to give the Warriors extra possessions. So I think AD is going to be spending a lot of time defensively on Looney, so he can remain the back line of that defense, because the further you take AD from the basket, the more vulnerable the defense becomes. But also trying to keep Kevon Looney from getting Golden State those extra tries at the basket, that's a full-time job in and of itself when you're on defense. So I think that's going to be a really big deal.
Yeah, I am frightened of this matchup. And Anthony Slater at The Athletic did a really good breakdown of the games that they did play, and the numbers for Davis in these games. Even the Lakers won, even where he put up points, he was not efficient, and that is Looney. And a lot of and I think there is an advantage to having a guy who is not expected to be any kind of offensive and he can just do the when it's his turn, bodying up Davis down low, whatever it might be. And I'm sure Draymond will get some possessions there too. Sure. But, and then on the offensive side, like Andy said, that line for Davis when he's defending, when Looney's, on offense between, okay, I don't have to really pay attention to him, but I can't leave. And so, towing that line is going to be something that, he's capable of doing, because Anthony Davis, just his defense against Memphis, was otherworldly the entire series. He was unbelievable. And he can do that again against the Warriors, different kind of assignment. But offensively, I think, like Andy said, I think the Looney assignment is a much more difficult one than is going to be given credit for. And if he can't figure out a way to be reasonably efficient in that, the Lakers already struggle to score in the half court, and Golden State, I always feel, has another gear it can crank up defensively in a series like this. And so, I actually feel like LeBron, finding a way for LeBron to get loose, whether that's against Draymond, whether it's against Wiggins or whatever it might be, is going to be important. And then, we mentioned D'Lo before. Guys like that are going to be huge.
And speaking of defense, what I was curious to ask you guys, my theory is, this is a hard thing to prove, but you keep mentioning Looney defending Anthony Davis, but I'm of the belief that Anthony Davis's kryptonite is Draymond Green. They have a very long history. You talk about those struggles, and a lot of that was Draymond as well. Well, their matchups aren't game long, right? Like, they saved Draymond in that matchup largely for energy purposes, because Draymond probably got wiped out trying to handle him the whole game. But so my question to you is, do you agree with that sentiment, and what are your thoughts? And two, how and who and what is the plan to defend Stephen Curry for the Los Angeles Lakers?
Well, as far as the Draymond being kryptonite piece of the question, I don't know specifically about that, but what I think is going to be really interesting is how much leeway he gets in the series from the refs. Like, how much do you allow Draymond to get away with in terms of physicality? I think that's going to be interesting, just to see how much Draymond can get away with in terms of physicality. Who defends Steph? I've been going back and forth on this, thinking about it. I've listened to people like the Lakers Film Room podcast. They're very good at anticipating this sort of stuff. I was listening earlier to Zach Lowe on the Low Post podcast with Jeff Van Gundy. Nobody seems to be in complete consensus about this. I could see Jared Vanderbilt being put on him to try to bother him with length, having so little offensive responsibilities. It's just like, look, just stay on this guy, navigate every screen, work. I could also see them wanting to put Austin Reeves on him. The problem with Reeves is he has so much offensive responsibility as it is. Chasing Steph around all those screens, I think, would be absolutely exhausting for a series. I could also see, too, Darvin Ham messing with some of his rotation to get Dennis Schroeder in earlier than normal, because Schroeder is extremely good at both point of attack defense and navigating through screens. I think Troy Brown Jr., who got a DNP CD in Game 7 and did not play particularly well during the Memphis series, I do think he's going to get some run because he's an active defender and also good at navigating screens. But I can't decide how I think they're going to start between Vanderbilt and Reeves.
I think it's going to be I think it's a bunch. Like, you might see Vanderbilt at the beginning on him, and partially because Vanderbilt has the least amount of offensive responsibilities. But I also think you can't ask Jared Vanderbilt to chase Steph around all those screens all day. Like, one-on-one in space, sure. But Reeves, the reason I think you'll see a lot of Reeves and a lot of Schroeder is because those are the two best guys at working over screens, have the agility to do it. And, Schroeder has the endurance, I think, as well, too. He's a hard guy to wear down. But there's been a lot of calls, I think, for Darvin to shorten the rotation, particularly among the in the backcourt. And it's gonna be a little harder to do in this series because the amount of movement that you get from Steph, from Clay, and all, it's like it's a lot from Poole. It's a lot to ask guys to just chase with 8 dudes on the floor, 7, 8, 9. You kind of need that 9th guy. So I think you will see a little bit more of that. Darvin trying to steal minutes. Like I said, I think you'll definitely see Draymond guarding AD, particularly in critical moments. I think that'll happen a lot. But one of the things that I think is just fascinating about the series in general is like the Lakers. You have Jared Vanderbilt, who's going to be ignored offensively. I am fairly sure. Steve Kerr, if I could think of this, I'm sure Steve Kerr can too. They're going to make the Lakers take and make threes because they've been so bad at it and they were terrible in the Memphis series. So, and meanwhile, Golden State, it's like Draymond and Kevon Looney are going to be completely ignored. Like you've seen how teams play these guys. It's like, it was like watching the way that Golden State played Sabonis in that series where, Looney's basically standing under the basket with Sabonis at the top of the key.
Westbrook treatment.
Yeah, go ahead and shoot jumpers, which I'm surprised worked as well as it did because Sabonis is a pretty good player and a decent shooter. But the matchups like that where you have these sort of offensive holes on each team that, and how you arrange the players and arrange the matchups against these other players who are so good and have so much gravity. It's one of the things that I think is really interesting about this.
And it's interesting too, Cyrus, you had mentioned how against the Kings, they often seem to be putting a weaker defender on Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah.
And Wiggins began attacking it.
Yeah.
And you'd mentioned D'Angelo's defensive weaknesses. I actually think he's going to start the series on Wiggins, even though I think that is in the aggregate advantage Wiggins. I also think for D'Angelo, it's the best assignment because as good as Wiggins is, there's less to keep track of. He's more of just a straight ahead assignment as opposed to having
you can't run around like.
Well, no, I mean, but just having. You don't want D'Angelo. And look, to be fair to D'Angelo, he has been better defensively than I think his both reputation and actuality with the Lakers. He's been working hard. He has been attentive. He hasn't really hurt them defensively at all. But you don't want him in an assignment where you have to keep track of a lot of stuff, like off-ball movement, that sort of thing.
All right. We got time for one more segment left. Unfortunately, Kylen can't stay around for it. She's ducking out before we can make our big series predictions.
Unless you want to go now, Kyle.
Perfect time. I don't want to make a series prediction. I hate predictions, but can I ask you guys one more question that I have? I had one. My question is, you guys were just talking a lot about Austin Reeves. We saw him with a big Game 4 performance in the Memphis series, 23 points. And I know I have someone in mind on the Warriors side, but like, who is a role player on the Lakers that you feel like could actually, hold the key to this series? Because there's going to be a ton of talk about LeBron. There's going to be a ton of talk about AD. You're talking about, how the Warriors attack and take advantage of D'Angelo Russell. All those things I feel like are, kind of out there in the open. But who's a player that you feel like could sneakily be a difference maker?
I mean, I think obviously it depends a little bit on like, do you consider Russell, do you consider Reeves role guys or sort of a step above that? If the Lakers need one more guy, like there's, they need that sort of player. And particularly coming from the bench when the bench was not terribly resourceful, aside from Rui Hachimura. And Andy had the picture ready to go.
He's my answer.
Right.
I was thinking about it.
I feel like particularly in the bench, like that's a player that, given how he played in the first round, I think could cause a little bit of trouble for the second units with the Warriors. I feel like, his size, but the mobility, the offensive game, the mid-range, I would look for that. And they need points from somewhere. Like Dennis Schroeder's going to have a better offensive series than he did against Memphis.
Rui's a tough cover. Rui, especially the way he's been used with the Lakers and, seemingly developed, credit to Phil Handy, who has been in his ear a lot. And there's been a lot of talk about the dividends it's already paid. LeBron has been in Rui's ear a lot. And to Rui's credit, he has apparently been just asking LeBron questions constantly. And LeBron has raved about the idea that Rui, that ability to create his own shot at that size with that type of athleticism, he's hard to cover, period. But I also think when you start thinking about the Warriors and the players on their bench, I'm not sure who the obvious matchup defending him is. And he played extremely well in the Memphis series. So Rui to me feels like the obvious guy.
Yeah, I don't know how the Warriors survive this series if Jonathan Kuminga is DNP'd again.
I think the answer might be Kuminga, but
because that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, that's immediately what I'm thinking. I'm still bitter to no end that you folks got Rory for what 3 second-round picks. I mean, that's
and Kendrick Nunn. No erasure there.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry to forget Kendrick, who did so much for you guys. Yeah, so are we doing predictions or no? What are we doing right now? What's next?
Well, let's take a break so we can let Kylen go, and but then we'll be back to wrap it up.
Bye, Kylen.
Awesome. Bye. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you later. We'll catch you in the flip sid of this series where we can talk some smack after we know who won.
Well, we'll go easy on you, Kylen.
Boom. Look at that.
Awesome.
That's fighting words. All right, we'll be back for the final segment next.
Well, if you're a regular viewer of Locked On Warriors, you've heard my spiel before when it comes to PrizePicks. But if you're new and you're unfamiliar with PrizePicks, I've got some fun lined up for you. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy and especially made fun. The entire premise is betting the over-unders on individuals and their accomplishments. Is Stephen Curry going to score over or under 29.5 points? Is LeBron James going to grab over or under 8 rebounds? That's the entire premise. You pick a minimum of 2, a maximum of 6, and hopefully you win up to 25 times your entry, which is a possibility. It's super fun and it's super easy. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, they give you $100. And if you don't have 100, you only got 50, 25, whatever it is, they will match it. Don't forget to enter the promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match of up to $100.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, back for one more. Thanks again to Kylen for joining. I have, we obviously, the thing you always do at the end of a series, a podcast like this is like, you make your predictions, who's going to win and this, that. I honestly, I can easily construct scenarios in which, the Warriors win, in which the Lakers win, in which the Lakers kind of run the Warriors off the floor, and where the Warriors run the Lakers off the floor. Like I have a vision for all of these things, and trying to figure out what is actually going to happen in this series is, for me at least, it's been hard over the last, few days while I've been trying to figure out Warriors or Kings or whatever. I think the Lakers would have had an easier time beating the Kings. Like that would have been a better series for the Lakers. This one scares me a lot more.
Why?
Because I think Steph went for 50. I think the interior defense for the Warriors with Looney and Green in that specific matchup with AD, I would have much rather seen AD have 7 games against Sabonis. I think he's a great player. Sabonis is a great player, but he's not.
I see what
he
you're
is
saying.
not the interior player that Looney is defensively, and you also have the added benefit of, if you can get Sabonis into foul trouble, which is not that hard, that eats into what Sacramento can do offensively. So I feel like there were sort of institutional advantages there that went along with the Sabonis matchup that you don't get with Golden State, despite the fact that Looney isn't a tenth of the offensive force that Sabonis is as a passer or a scorer. So that's part of it. And then, Steph, Clay,
is harsh. Is harsh. Looney's actually surprisingly good.
He's not a 10, but you understand what I'm getting.
Yeah, I do understand. But yeah, he's
you
actually
don't run your
surprisingly
offense
good
through Kevon Looney. Kevon Looney's not going to pile up
But they've been doing. That's one thing they did in Sacramento. That was actually an adjustment.
But you understand, really, he's not going to. Sabonis is during the season intimately familiar with this. He was my fantasy team. It was great. 26, 14, and 11.
He does
like the crazy numbers there. I wouldn't run my offense through Kevon Looney either if I had Steph, Clay, Draymond, Wiggins, Poole, who I know is controversial, but you get the point. So that's why I'm concerned about it. Andy?
I mean, the Warriors are I think when they are at their best, when they're at their most disciplined, they're a very smart team that is never going to, I think, lose confidence in themselves. I do think, and this is funny, and Cyrus, I'm curious to get your take on this, because the Warriors are the most been there, done that team in the league right now. But I do think that they were kind of rattled in Game 7. And the reason I say that is because Clay shot very poorly, Wiggins shot very poorly, Poole shot very poorly, and they missed 11 free throws. And, on one hand, Steph went nuclear, had 50, and Steph is the ultimate, in case of emergency, or maybe even it's not an emergency, just break the damn glass anyway, weapon that you can have. Like, there's nobody in the league that bends defenses more than Steph Curry. And it's not even close. But I also think that Game 7, you needed Steph to be otherworldly and in his own right, Kevon Looney to be otherworldly for them to get through it. But I also think that there was a unique pressure to playing Sacramento because, like we talked about at the top of the show, they were the team that everybody supposedly wanted. And the conventional wisdom was you should be like trying to jockey your way to get them. If you lose to them, especially as defending champions in the first round, I feel like I feel like that, and also too, it's just like that's more humiliating than losing to, say, Phoenix in the first round, or losing to Denver in the first round, or even Memphis in the first round. Like, this was the team that supposedly was the Patsies, and I think that kind of entering the playoffs, and I think that created some type of unique pressure. But either way, it looked to me like Golden State was tight in that Game 7.
Yeah, I mean, that perspective changed the moment the series started because Sacramento is very legitimate. I've told every Kings fan who's watched or listened, you leave that series with your head high because that Mike Brown is the envy of the league for having that team going into next year. I mean, they have no direction to go but up, and they already were the 3 seed this year, and so they're a damn good team. The Warriors have been in a lot of Game 7s, man, and they've won all of them. Except for 2016, which is I hate,
which involved LeBron.
Yeah, with your boy LeBron. Yeah, but so my feeling on this series, tying into what you're talking about, is the Warriors, and this is where my gripes with Kerr come in, is the Warriors have, in my opinion, the personnel to go deep and go far. They have bigs, they have wings. That Kerr just is really hesitant to use, and the why of that, I mean, it's all about who a coach trusts, right? And I don't think he has much trust in Kuminga, despite his athleticism, his 6'8" frame, despite the fact that his efficiency numbers are through the roof this year. He was a terrific basketball player, and he got rewarded for that with DNPs in this first round series. JaMychal Green, who was like one of their main free agent pickups, he stands 6'9", and he played one game in that series against the Kings. Game 3 was the only game that the Warriors blew out, save for Game 7, but you needed 50 points from Steph to pull that off, right? I mean, if Steph scores his normal 30, that's essentially an even game. So Steph's 50 was all the difference in that Game 7. The Jordan Poole thing is one example of where Steve Kerr's coaching is going to be tested, because Jordan Poole did not have a good series against the Kings. And every fan, I was one of the last ones, I finally jumped on the train as well. Fans have grown impatient with Jordan Poole. They're booing him at Chase Center sometimes. He heard those boos in Game 6. And Steve Kerr needs to, in my opinion, have a short leash. I mean, if Jordan Poole is having a bad game, especially against a bigger team like the Lakers, he's a negative. I mean, just plain and simple. He is not helping your team. He's hurting your team. And I really hope Kerr goes to these bigs that he has on his bench. Moses Moody's another one. We finally started seeing him. He was actually a positive in Game 7, by the way. I think played like 16 minutes and produced great results. The Klay Thompson piece of this is interesting. He's expressed a lot of excitement to play against the Lakers, given his dad's history there. Michael Thompson, he's on the radio there too, I think, right in LA. And
yeah, we work with him.
Oh, there you go. So so Clay is super ecstatic about this series, but Clay's best years are behind him. I mean, I that's what I saw in the first round. Like Clay, for example, has come out recently and said he wants a max extension. Good luck with that, pal. Like, I mean, you better be happy with 20-25 million. I mean, that's the best you're going to get, because the Clay that dominated game sixes, that's no more. He's still a very serviceable player. He's a great player, but he's not the player that is the clear number 2 on this team anymore. He doesn't dominate like he used to and take over. So the Warriors are going to need like Andrew Wiggins, obviously, Kevon Looney, Draymond, but they're going to need to go to their bigger, more athletic players. Like, I don't know if Dante DiVincenzo, how much run he's going to get. He had a so-so series at best against the Kings. If that continues, I think you need to have a short leash with him as well. But Steve Kerr's trust
starting to run out of players, Cyrus.
Well, but the same thing. The same thing happens with the Lakers. Because it's not exactly the same thing. But we spent a lot of time for Monday's show on that idea of like, what does playoff LeBron mean now? Like, because Tom Ziller was a great Substack, and it's totally worth subscribing to. Had made the point. It's like LeBron, was like 70% of playoff LeBron against the Grizzlies, or maybe he was 70% of what that used to mean, but 90% of what playoff LeBron is now, which is still pretty good, but not
damn good. Yeah,
that good. He's not that guy, like, and where just transcendent playoff performances that he had been. So I think we'll learn more about the answer to that question, and then. But
who on the Lakers bench, like, do you debate about that? Who isn't getting?
Well, I mean, Beasley, Malik Beasley became a real talking point because the Lakers are trying real hard. Darvin Ham's trying real hard to get him going, because the ability to have volume 3-point shooting that is meaningful for a team that has very inconsistent, I think would be a good word for it, perimeter play. And he can't, but he's been really bad with the Lakers. He's been really bad.
Raindrops.
But they're trying to make it work. And so I think that's been a thing. And like how the Lakers, anytime Anthony Davis went off the floor in that series, were terrible. And so,
I guess to summarize my point,
I expect a totally different dynamic in this series in terms of who's good, who isn't, who's playable, who's not. Because, to say the least, the Warriors are a very different team than the Memphis Grizzlies.
Oh, night and day. Yeah. I mean, I guess to summarize my point why I'm listing all these players, one is in all of the Warriors championships, strength in numbers was not just some slogan, some marketing slogan. It's a legitimate adage, man. The Warriors routinely go 11, 12 deep in all their runs, including in the Celtics series last year. And Kerr has abandoned that. That's what I'm trying to say. He's now going 8-9 like most coaches do. The Warriors have never been successful following that model. Like, you need to use your depth, and that's become a huge point of concern. And he went with small ball in the Kings series, barely got by with it. If he goes with small ball again against your team, you're winning. Lakers are winning, plain and simple. Like, small ball is not going to work against 6'8", 6'9", 6'10" guys. That's your average lineup sometimes. It's crazy. So, like, Lonnie Walker's damn good. Like, and he's not a short dude. Your team is long and deep.
He's not even playing.
He's not even playing. Is he hurt, or he just fell that far down the rotation? Wow, that's crazy.
Defend.
Okay, but
it's a defense problem.
That's crazy. That's fascinating. But you never know. I mean, right? Coaches sometimes find certain matchups, and because I feel like Lonnie Walker has always played well against the Warriors. That's actually very surprising.
Like I said, I think you're going to need a ninth guy in this series. I don't think you can chase Steph and chase Clay and run around with these guys for what could be 6 or 7 games. Smart, physical, underrated physical team. Like the Warriors don't. They're not. They know how to defend, and they do it well. So
true.
An epic length preview podcast for what
we've got long. I gotta throw this in before we go, because I've been a Warriors fan since the mid 80s, and like there has been on more than one occasion a Western Conference semifinal series going back to the 80s where your team did a number on the Golden State Warriors, a team who was always a pretender in those days. Although Sleepy Floyd's record still holds for most points in a quarter and a half in the playoffs against Michael Cooper. And I had a chance to interview Michael Cooper about that. And his face went from a smile to a frown like that, because he's still bitter about that game in that moment. But yeah, so I would love to see revenge on all the old folks like myself who still remember those 80 series and LeBron James 30-21 in game 1. So yeah, I hope the Warriors better win game 1 and hold home court. That's my thought. And I'm predicting Warriors in 5 or 6. How about you folks?
Okay, Warriors in 5 or 6. Andy?
Lakers in 7.
I feel like people I'm still getting flack for this on the Locked On Lakers YouTube channel board there. I had the Grizzlies in 6. The last round, I did not like anything about that matchup, and I was wrong. And I'm very happy to be wrong. I'm still happy to be doing this. Nobody likes the off-season podcast. We all know what this is.
I don't want to. I don't want to.
No, nobody wants to go into that.
Nope.
But I feel much better about this series. But I don't want to get blamed for being like, oh, you picked against the Lakers the first one. Now you're picking the Lakers in the second one. So I'm going to say, because I don't want to switch it up. I'll say Warriors in 7.
See, like reverse jinxing. I see what you're doing.
But I feel much more confident.
A reverse jinx doesn't work if you call your shot, dummy. Like, that's not how this stuff works.
Oh, the Lakers in 7 then. Then at me if we lose. Is it my fault?
I love it, Mr. President. Love it.
All right.
I should have just wagged the dog on that one. Like nobody can know.
This is going to be. I'm ecstatic about this series, though, man. Every game is just going to be a show. No question about that.
A lot of fun. All right, we got to go before David Locke yells at us for length.
Exactly.
Locked On Lakers and Locked On Warriors available on YouTube. We might end up doing another show like this, depending on how the series goes. Cyrus, thank you very much for the time, and we will see everybody on Wednesday.